Cryptocurrency. Even the name of it sounds, well, cryptic, right? But a lot of people are super excited about it. We're going to tell you why, but we're also talking about a big problem: the vast amount of energy the system uses. Let's start with Monopoly. So, imagine we're all playing a game of Monopoly. In the game, one person is the banker, and the other players have to go through the bank to make transactions. In simple form, this basic setup is the way every major monetary system in the world works. But there's some issues with the system. Because banks and other financial institutions have so much power, they get to skim some money off the top of each transaction. With lots of power centralized in one place, there's lots of opportunities for fraud or theft. So let's say in our game of Monopoly, we don't want to give all this power to the bank, so we get rid of it. Now we need a new system to keep track of our finances, and we decide to try cryptocurrency. There's lots of different types of cryptocurrencies, but let's stick to Bitcoin since that's the most popular one right now. We don't trust anyone to be in charge of Bitcoin, so everyone needs to keep track of every transaction. When someone buys their first Bitcoin, they download a digital wallet, which has an encrypted record of every transaction ever made. We no longer have a designated banker, but some players have to take on extra responsibilities. As the game is played, it's their job to check all new transactions to make sure they are legitimate and in the right order. These players are called miners. Even though we have a physical representation of a Bitcoin on the board right now, remember it's a digital currency. It only has value because people believe it has value and are willing to trade stuff for it. So now our game has progressed, and Player 1 wants to buy St. James Place from Player 2. To pay, she'll send a message to everyone in the network to say, Player 1 sends 1 Bitcoin to Player 2, but it'll be encoded with a special key that proves it's really from Player 1 and not a hacker or a thief. The miners will check it with all the previous transactions to make sure Player 1 really has a Bitcoin to send to Player 2. In exchange for checking things out, the miners get a small fraction of a Bitcoin called a tip. But what if Player 2 tries to pay Player 3 and Player 4 at the same time, but he doesn't have enough Bitcoin for both transactions? Remember, there's no central authority to decide which transaction is legitimate or spread the information. Instead, the message spreads by bouncing from user to user, and there could be a discrepancy about who owns the Bitcoin based on which message got to each user first. The solution to these disputes involves something called blockchain. Creating the blockchain is what uses so much energy, so we have to talk a little bit about how it works. Let's pack up Monopoly and start playing Battleship. Imagine your opponent has only 1 ship on the board. You've got to guess again and again to find it. Now imagine that all of your friends are also playing the same game of Battleship, and you're competing to see who can hit the ship first. This is basically what Bitcoin miners are doing, but they use powerful computers to make guesses. The more computing power a miner has, the faster they can go. Whoever guesses the correct answer first gets a big reward. But instead of launching a couple hits on a ship, the computers are guessing multiple answers to a complex math problem called a hash function. The computers have to guess a string of letters and numbers out of millions of combinations. All of that computing takes lots and lots of electricity. But the difficulty and the randomness of the race is important because it makes it nearly impossible to cheat the system. Now, wait, what does all of this have to do with using Bitcoin? Well, these Bitcoin miners are not just solving computer puzzles to get rewards. Remember, this whole thing is about solving disputes about the order of transactions. To explain, let's get out Jenga. So imagine each Jenga piece is a transaction. Miners group the transactions they receive into blocks. Transactions that have already happened are linked in a chain of blocks like this Jenga tower. Like I said before, miners might have different versions of the same block of transactions because of delays in the network. The miners compete using those complicated math problems we talked about earlier to have their block be the next one in the chain. The winning block links to the chain, and the winning miner receives a reward of 12.5 Bitcoin. That's worth about $100,000. Once the blocks are linked, the order can't be changed. If a hacker tries to change one of the previous transactions, everyone in the network will be alerted. The Bitcoin network is set up so that a new block can be added to the chain an average of every 10 minutes. As Bitcoin value rises, more people with more computing power compete to solve the puzzle. The function automatically becomes more and more difficult to solve to maintain the average time. This system is integral to how Bitcoin works, and making the puzzle easier to solve would make the currency easier to attack. But the computing power takes a lot of energy. According to the widely cited Bitcoin website, Digiconomist, each Bitcoin transaction used the same amount of energy that it takes to power 28 American homes for one day. That number is constantly rising. The energy used to power the network for just 1 second could power about 4 average American cars for a week. The entire Bitcoin network uses about the same amount of energy as the country of Switzerland. Cryptocurrency and blockchain supporters say this technology will revolutionize our entire payment system. But to get anywhere close to that future, those who build and use cryptocurrency have to solve their massive energy problem.